In this video, we shall see the use of continue statement in PHP.
So in this example, the continue statement is used inside a while loop. So what does the continue statement do? In fact, continue is somewhat opposite to what the break does. We have seen that the break inside the while loop, if break is encountered, the loop will be terminated and it will abandon the remaining number of operations or iterations of a loop. Continue on the other hand will restart the loop from the beginning. It will discard or abandon the remaining statements in the current iteration and start the next iteration. So that is how the continue behaves. So in this example, actually I should write this as continue, right? There is a loop which is controlled by the variable y is equal to 0 in the beginning, and while loop is expected to go up to y less than 10. In every time y is incremented and a random number is generated and it is printed. So if this number was not present, or rather if this statement was not present, then what would have happened? 10 different random numbers would have been generated and printed. Okay, so it is printing the value of y and x. So y is equal to 1, whatever the number was generated. So 10, y is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, up to 10 it will go, and corresponding the values of x will be printed. This if this statement is removed. But if this is the case, then anytime if the random number generated is equal to 5, this statement will not be printed and it will go to the next iteration of the loop. Y will take the next value and again the random number will be generated. If it again is equal to 5, it will skip this statement and go back. If it is not, then this will be printed and the loop will be continued till y is less than 10. So 10 number of repetitions will take place, but this statement will be printed or not will depend on the value of x. If it is equal to 5, this will be skipped and the next iteration will take place. So that is how this continue statement works. I have saved this file as continue.php and the server will start. I will go to the browser and give this URL as this one. Okay. So the server is running. I'll give the URL as continue.php and press enter. There you see the number of iterations are 1 to 10, but the second iteration has been skipped because the value that has been generated might have been equal to 5. So it skipped the subsequent print or echo statement and the number of repetitions have gone up to 10. Again refresh it, it may give different output. In this case, even after 10 iterations, the random number 5 was not generated. So all the 10 iterations have appeared. In this case, the iteration number 5 is skipped because obviously because x would have been equal to 5. So that is how here again all the 10. Here again all the 10. You see 7 and 8 are skipped. That is because obviously x would have been equal to 5. So this is the behavior of the continue statement.
In this video, we shall have a look at the different decision making statements that are available in PHP.
So this example is used to demonstrate the behavior of if, else if and else, the conditional statements in PHP. And for this purpose, I am using a built-in function in PHP called as rand. This generates a random number between the two parameters that I have given, 1 to 100. So every time it will generate a number between 1 to 100. Now all I have to do is to check whether it lies in a particular range. So to begin with, if x is less than 25, I have to just print the prompt number less than 25. else if the number is not less than 25, then I want to check it whether it is less than 50. If it is so, then I'll print number is between 25 to 50. Else, that means if both the conditions are not true, then the control of the program will land into the last or the final else. So you can have a series of else if statements to relegate or discard the different conditions that may be present in the entire decision logic. So here the first condition, if this is not true, the second condition, and if all the previous cases or conditions are not true, then the program will land into the final else. So this is the use of if, else, else if and else. So let us see how it behaves. Of course, the number we generated will be a random number, so every time you may find different output being generated. So let us run it couple of times and see the result. So the server is running, and I have opened the browser in which I am giving the address localhost if statement.php, the script that we have written. I have saved it as if statement.php in the document root of the server, web server. So I just press enter. At this point of time, the random number generated is 53, and therefore it is greater than or equal to 50. Again, if I run it, it may generate a different number, and the different result number is greater than 50. Again, fortunately, all the time the number is greater than 50 is appearing. We may get some number. The numbers are being randomized, but I wonder, yeah, so this is random number 5, number is less than 25. So the randomization also is taking accurately, and the if statement result is also appearing as per the requirement. So this is the demonstration of if, else if and else in PHP.
If your programming logic requires multiple if statements, then writing or putting more than one if statements in a sequence becomes rather clumsy, especially if each of these if or else blocks might be containing more than one statements. In that case, you will have to make a block of the statements by using the curly brackets. So in that, this unnecessary clumsiness of multiple if statements, it is also a switch case statement is also available. So you can use that in this particular situation.
So in this example, I will show you the use of switch case, another conditional statement in PHP, where the different cases or different possibilities of a switching variable are processed. Right. So therefore, for this example, I am also using the rand function, and the rand function is used 3 times to generate 3 random numbers. First 2 random numbers are between 1 to 10. These are going to be used as the operands for the addition, multiplication, subtraction and division operations. Which operation is to be done will be decided by the third random number between 1 to 4. So these 3 random numbers x, y, z will be printed as they are generated. Now since my addition, subtraction, multiplication, division operations are going to be decided by the value of the z variable, I am using switch z. So if the value of z happens to be 1, the case 1 will be satisfied because z is equal to 1. Addition will be done and the control will break out of this switch to this output statement. You know that each case must be having the last statement as break in order to prevent the program control from falling through the entire cascade of switches, the cases. So every case has a break at the end. Of course, this will not require because this is the last one. Okay, so the result is, expected result is very obvious. Two random numbers from 1 to 10 will be generated. Third random number between 1 to 4 will be generated. Depending on the value of z, switching will take place. If z is equal to 1, addition, 2, subtraction, multiplication and division. Okay, and whatever the result will be printed. So I have saved this file as switch.php in the document root of the web server. With the web server running, we'll enter this file as a URL and see the result. We'll of course run it couple of times to see the different randomization of the results. Okay. So I have entered the URL as localhost switch.php and enter numbers 94, operation code is 3, result is 36. Again executed, numbers 86, operation code 2, result is 2. So it is fairly accurately 4, 5, result is 0.8, that being the division. 7, 10, again the division is 0.7. So 110 addition, result is 11. So that's how the output is going to come as a result of the switch case functionality of our conditional statements in PHP.
In this video, I will explain to you the use of while loop in a PHP program.
So let us now see the execution of while loop as it is used in PHP. So in this code I have two while loops in action. This is one and this is another. So in first case, the initial value of a variable that is controlling the loop is I equal to 0, and I want to execute these two statements. What are these two statements? Increment the value of I and print it out, so long as the value of I is less than 10. So what do you expect starting from I is equal to 1? The number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is the expected output of this loop. Okay. In the second example, again I am using the rand function to generate a random number between 1 to 10, and that is the value of x, and the loop is expected to keep on repeating till x is not equal to 5. So depending on the possibility or the probability of the what random number is generated at that point of time, x, the loop may go on for 1, 2, 5, 9, 100 number of repetitions, or it may even terminate in the very first place where probability of the first random number itself being equal to 5 will be there. So the output will be unpredictable, so to say, because it involves a random number, and so long as the random number is not equal to 5, this loop is going to run. This is a straightforward 1 to 10 output. This is of course a random output till the number generated is not equal to 5. Okay, so these two examples now I will show you. I have saved this file as while.php. I will start the server, open the browser, give the URL of this, right? Okay, so now the server is running. In the browser I am giving localhost while.php. Just press enter. This is the output of the first while loop, which generates numbers from 1 to 10. This is the output of a loop having a random number, and the loop is expected to go on till it encounters a 5. So as soon as the number is 5, the loop is terminated. So that many number of times x was generated, it was not equal to 5. If I again run it, the second loop output may be different. See, only the second occurrence of a random number is equal to 5. So after the two iterations, the loop terminated. So that can vary as see the first number itself is 5. So this is how the while loop behaves in a PHP script.
This video explains to you the use of for loop in PHP.
So in this PHP script, I will show you the use of for statement and for loop. And there are three different examples. With the help of each, I will show you the different ways in which the for statement is used. But the syntax of for loop is like this. It takes three parameters. One is the initialization of the controlling variable. Here x is set to equal to 1. Second statement is the test condition up to which the for loop is running is expected to run x is less than 10, and every time how much increment or the controlling variable to be incremented by what, x plus plus is the third argument. So this loop will run from x equal to 1 to x less than 10, incrementing the value of x every time by 1. So I expect number to be printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in as a result of this for loop. But you know that the three parameters of this for loop, or three clauses of this, not parameters, the clauses of the for loop, they are not mandatory as such. You can ignore even all of them and I told you that even if all the arguments are not given, the for loop will become a infinite loop. Here in this case, what I am doing, I am setting the initial value of x is equal to 0. I am giving the test condition, and what is the test condition? I expect this for loop to go on till x not equal to 5, and I have not mentioned any value of the incrementing clause. Okay, and then inside the for loop there is a rand function which generates numbers, any random number from 1 to 10, and I have to print it. So every time when the loop runs, if it doesn't encounter x equal to 5, the loop will run. As soon as x printed value of x is equal to 5, this test condition will be false and the loop will stop. So how many iterations this for loop will do, that you never know. That depends on the random number. In what occurrence, or at which occurrence, or at which instance x will become 5, that is a random choice. So you will expect different output of this second for loop. The for loop is especially popular when you want to traverse the entire array. So array, of course, you will learn in one of the subsequent chapters, but here I am declaring a array ARR as an array. Array is a built-in function to create an array, and there are 5 elements. So if I run a for loop from x equal to 0 to 4, every time incrementing x by 1, I use this control variable x as the index of the array. So array of x, I'll print array of x every time. So array of 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So that means 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. These numbers are expected to be printed. Okay, so this is the simple for loop. This is a for loop in which the termination is decided by the random number, and this is the third for loop to traverse the array. Okay, so I have saved this file as forloop.php in the document root of my server. The web server will now start, and then in the local in the browser's address bar, I will give the URL of this localhost forloop.php and see the result. So with the web server already running, in the browser I am giving forloop.php as the URL. There you see the three different outputs. This is the output of the first for loop from 1 to 10. This is the output of the second for loop in which a random number is to be generated, and if the random number encountered is equal to 5, the loop is going to terminate. This is the traversal of the array in which these 5 elements are there. This of course will be a variable output. Every time it may generate different number of values. So if I run it again, there you see the random number was encountered to be equal to 5 just at the second occurrence. That may change. This is the traditional or simple for loop 1 to 10. This is the array traversal. Okay, so that's how the for loop is used in a PHP script.
In this video, I'll tell you about the MySQL API, which is a part of the PHP software.
So with the help of this example, let us try and understand the features of MySQL API. Before going on to explain this code, let me tell you that this MySQL API has been deprecated since the PHP 7. So if you have in your computer PHP 7 installed, then this code may not work. Instead, you will have to get a PHP 5 or earlier version installed on your computer so that this MySQL API can be used. So for this purpose, I have installed a WAMP server in which, in addition to the Apache server and MySQL software, the PHP version 5 is available. So let me show you the home page of the WAMP server. So this is the WAMP server home page. You can see that the PHP version 5.3.10 is the version that is installed on it, and the extension that is available is MySQL. So the MySQL API functions can be run on this particular configuration. So PHP MyAdmin is the GUI interface for managing the MySQL database. So if I open this, it will show you the different databases that are stored on the server, and the rest of the menus are provided by which you can add the data, insert the data, create the table, etc., etc. We are of course not going to do anything from this. This is just a verification. This will be a verification of all the activities that you will do from the PHP side. Okay, so this is where your data will come and stay. Okay, so let us go back to the PHP code now. So first is the execution of MySQL connect function, which enables or which establishes the connection of your PHP program with the MySQL server, and it needs 3 parameters: the name of the host, username, and password. So they have been set here. If these credentials are found to be correct, this connection resource will be created. If not, then I want to terminate the entire program, so therefore I am executing a die function with this particular error message. Otherwise, I'll go on to create a database called as testdb. So this is the SQL statement that I want to execute: create database testdb. And in order to execute the SQL query, a function in MySQL API is MySQL query. It needs two parameters. One is the query, other is the connection object that we have created here. This query does not get run properly. This return value will not be created. In that case also I want to terminate. But if it does go ahead, then I want to create a table. So this is the query of create table, in which the table structure is given here. How many fields are there? Employee name, employee address, employee salary. Its type and its size are mentioned here, and some other constraints are also mentioned, like for example, name cannot be null. In fact, all of them are specified to be not null. And in addition to that, a fourth field is also present, employee ID, which is an integer, which is not null, and it is auto increment also, and that employee ID has been stipulated to be a primary key of this particular table. So a table of this structure is to be created. So before running this query, I have to use the test DB, the database that was created in the previous step. Now that database is brought into use by a function MySQL select DB, and inside that this table needs to be created. So again execute the query MySQL query. If the table is properly created, if not, then stop. Otherwise, give the message table created and go on to execute the insert query. Insert query takes this following form: insert into the table name. Here in our case, the name of the table is employee. So insert name employee followed by the field, structure, the structure of the table. How many fields? Name, address, and employee salary. You don't have to give the ID field because it is auto incrementable. So automatically, as the number of records go on adding, the employee ID is anyway going to be incremented automatically. What are the values? Correspondingly, name will take Raju, address will take Nanded, and salary will take 10,000. So such a query, insert query, is to be executed. So again execute my SQL query. This is the string of query and the connection object. If properly executed, just display a enter data successfully message. And finally go on to close the connection that you created in the very first place by saying MySQL close. So this is the entire PHP script which will interact with the MySQL database. We open the connection, create the database, create the table, and insert a record. So all these activities will be done if you run this mysql1.php in your browser. Okay, so this was the explanation of the code. Now we will run it and see the result. Okay. So as I give this URL mysql1.php, you see the messages that are displayed in the browser's page. Connected successfully. This was when the MySQL connect function was properly executed. Test DB was created. Table employee was created, and one record was successfully entered or inserted inside the table. So this was the operation that was done. But we will have to verify this by going actually into our PHP myadmin, see that the database, the table, and the record is created. So for that purpose, this is our myadmin. I have to refresh this so that the test DB newly created database is visible here. Open this. There is a table called as employee which was just created. Click on this. This was a record that was added into the table by our PHP script. So this confirms that all the MySQL functions, MySQL API functions that we used in our PHP script have worked properly. Okay, so this was our first exercise. So this second example shows you how you can insert a record into a MySQL table by entering the data into an HTML form. So this script, if you open it in a browser, mysql2.php is the name that I have given. If you open it in a browser, for the first time, it will open a form. So I will show you the HTML form code here. This is the form from this point to this point. This is the form inside which in a 2-column table, what we have entered or what we have created is an input name is equal to employee name of the type text to enter the name, to enter the address, to enter the salary. So it is simply a form with 3 text fields and of course a button. Importantly, the form attributes that are given are form method is equal to post and action is equal to PHP self. That means what? the data will be posted to to this same script. So obviously when the first occurrence or first time when this PHP script will be displayed, the submit button might not have been pressed. Obviously not, submit has not been pressed. So when the as the page starts opening in your browser, this is set will fail because submit has not been pressed. The name of the button in this case is add. So this is not pressed, so therefore this part will not be executed. Which part? From here to here. And so therefore it will run into this form. So form will be opened, user will enter the data and press the submit button. Subsequently this post $post add will be true. Then actually the insertion operation will start. All the required credentials are given here: host name, username, password, using which the connection is established, and the form data which is stored in the $post server variable, super global server variable, from which the data is fetched and stored into the PHP variables emp name, address and salary. Use these variables to execute the insert query. Insert into employee, these are the names of the fields and these are the values that are fetched from the form, right? So this insert query is to be executed doing the same thing, selecting a database and executing the query. If all goes well, the message enter the data successfully should appear on your screen. So let us run this mysql2.php. One record is already there, which we have entered by hard coding the values into the insert query. Now we will fill up the new record by accepting it from an HTML form. So let us run this mysql2.php. So as I enter the URL mysql2.php in my browser, a HTML form is opened in which these three text fields are there to enter the name, address and salary, and then there is a submit button. So some data I will introduce or insert. Something like this, and press submit. Now that the data will be posted back to the same script, in which on the top there is a PHP code to establish the connection and insert the records. So that will be executed and the data will be successfully entered. So again go back to our PHP myadmin and see whether the newly inserted record does appear in it or not. So I have to refresh this and again open employee. There you go, the two records are now visible. So interactively by taking the user from the input, you can add the data into a backend MySQL table. That's how this script will allow you to do that. Okay. The third example in this continuation is regarding the reading of the data from a table using a select query and using the MySQL API functions. So how to read the data from the MySQL table? Again, starting with the same sequence of events, MySQL connect function to establish the connection. Select the database you want to process, the test DB. What is the query to be executed? Simple select star from employee. In order to execute query, the function is MySQL query. Because now this is a select query, the return value of this MySQL query function will be a result set. So this result variable is the result set. Using the MySQL API functions like MySQL number of rows will give me how many records are there in the table, and MySQL number fields will give me how many fields are there in my select query. Okay, so I will run a nested for loop situation where the upper loop or outer loop will run from 0 to the number of fields. In our case, there are 3 fields, right? Name, address and salary. And the inner loop is as many number of rows. Right now, in our example, we inserted 2 records, so number of rows is 2. So each time when a row is fetched from the result set, the row will be an associative array, and using the index of the fields as the index of that associative array, row of j will give me jth field from in the table. So when j is equal to 0, it will give me name, address and city. All these 3 fields will be put into 3 cells of one row. You see that I have started a table by echo table border is equal to 1. In the first row, all the field names have been displayed into one row. So you start a row, then add a td tag, insert or put the field name. The first field name j will be the loop which will control the value of the field name. So result j will be 0, result 0. The 0th field will be there, 1 and 2. So likewise name, address and salary, these field names will be the column names of my table. And these two nested for loops will fetch one row at a time and display the contents of each table in that row in separate td tags. So that's how the table will be formed. So if I run this script now, what I should see on my browser, a table showing the records divided into rows and columns. So let us run this and see what happens. So the MySQL 3.php is opened in the browser, and you can see the first row of the table is all the field names, ID, name, address and salary, and each row is subsequently displayed according to their field names. So that is how the data is extracted from the table and displayed on the browser with the help of the MySQL functions.
In this video, we shall come to know about the MySQL API.
Now for MySQL API, in order to display or demonstrate the use of MySQL API, this is the first example in which the procedural interface is used. And using the procedural functions, here I am showing you how you can display records by selecting the records from a table. So in other words, I want to execute the select star from employee query and display the result to see as to how many records are there. So if you try to compare every function in MySQL with MySQL, you will find that only difference probably is the adding I into the name of the function. Instead of MySQL connect, there will be MySQL connect and so on. Before that, let me tell you one more thing, that MySQL API is available in all the PHP installations with PHP 5 as well as PHP 7. So if you have a PHP 7 module installed in your bundle, especially the web server bundle containing Apache, MySQL and PHP, if you have a latest XAMPP server, then this 7 version of PHP will be available, and this code will actually indeed run on the XAMPP with PHP 7 also. So I am going to show you the execution on the XAMPP server itself. So for that, let me start the XAMPP server and show you the home page, and in which PHP 7 is present and MySQL has been enabled. So let me show you that. So this is the home page of XAMPP server, and go on to click this PHP info. The PHP version is 7, and down the line, if you go and search for MySQL I, it will show you the presence of MySQL I API. So which means that MySQL I API functions will now be executable on this. Okay, so let us go back to that PHP script which shows the procedural functions used from this MySQL I API. So starting with MySQL I connect, this function also requires the arguments like localhost, root is the username, there is password, no password has been set, and the name of the table to be connected, or rather name of the database to be connected. So this will create a connection resource. If not, if unable to connect, then there will be some error. You will display the error message properly to tell the user that the connection has not been established. Otherwise, execute the select query, select star from employee by MySQL I query instead of MySQL query was the earlier in the earlier case, right? In the result, how many number of rows have appeared that can be found by the function MySQLi num rows. Okay, and run a loop over it and fetch one row at a time and display the contents of the row. Row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3 will respectively be displaying the values of employee ID, name, address and salary. All these fields will be displayed in one for one record. Such like as many number of records are there, that many times this loop will run. Okay, so just a equivalent activity of MySQL API in which also you ran through the entire result set to display the records. So let us run this program and see. We now know that there are two records into it, or I wonder how many records are there. That many records will be displayed. Let us see how many records are there. So there are these two records in this employee table. We should be able to get the two records when we run our PHP script mysql i.php. So let us run it. So there you see mysql i.php has been executed in the browser. Employee ID 1, name Raju, address Nanded. This is our first record, and this is the second record. So the contents of the two records in the table have been displayed by the procedural interface functions of MySQL I API. Okay. Next, let us see the use of MySQL I functions which have an object-oriented approach towards the database handling activities. So, what you have to do? First and foremost, you have to create an object of MySQL I class. So, this is the statement CONN is equal to new MySQL I. The constructor takes three arguments: name of the server, which is localhost, username is root, password has not been set. So all these credentials are required to set up a MySQL I object. If not properly configured, it will result into an error, display the error message and stop the execution. Otherwise, go on to the next step. Execute this query, create database testdb. Okay, all you have to do is to execute a MySQLi object arrow query function. Query function will take this argument. If this function is properly executed, it will return true, and if it is true, then give a message database created successfully, otherwise give an error message, right? Next step is to select the newly created database by using the select db function of the MySQLi class, and then you have to run a query which will create a table. Create table employee, the syntax of the create table employee is according to the standard SQL syntax, in which name, address and salary are the fields. Their data type and size is mentioned along with the different constraints. In addition, this employee ID table field is also specified, which will be acting as a primary key. Again, query is executed by the query method or function inside the MySQLi class. If executed properly, the success message will be displayed, otherwise the error message will be displayed. And finally, you will have to execute an insert query. Insert into employee, these are the field names and these are the values. Execute the query. If success, give the success message, otherwise give the failure message. And lastly, close the connection by calling the close method of the MySQLi class. Okay, so this is exactly the same activity we are doing, but now we are using an object oriented approach that is provided by the MySQLi API. So let us run this MySQLi1.php. Before actually executing this script, I will have to ensure that the test DB that was created as a result of the earlier example, that test DB I will have to remove from my MySQL server. Then only I will be able to run this. Otherwise, it will result into an error that the database is already existing and none of the other steps will be executed. So I will first delete that and then run this. Okay. So if I execute this MySQL i1.php, you find that the successful execution of the statements, those messages have come up. Connected successfully, database created successfully, table employee created successfully, and new record created successfully. Actually, I should have given a BR at the end of each, so that the error messages would have come one below the other. But anyways, the operation has been done successfully. So let us go back to the PHP MyAdmin and check whether the test DB database, the employee table and the record has been added into it. So this is our admin. Refresh this. Test DB is created, employee is created, and this record Rajiv Nanded 10,000 is created. So the object oriented interface is working perfectly fine in this case. The next example to show the functionality of MySQLi API is to show the contents of a table by running a select query over it. Okay, so doing the same sequence of steps again, create a new MySQLi object. If the connection is properly executed, show the success message, otherwise show the failure message. Then go on to the next step. You want to execute now the select star from employee query. Okay, in order to do that, call the query method of the MySQLi class by its object. So con arrow query, the query is the SQL string that is given. So the result is the return value of this query function is a result set. So result is equal to con arrow query. From this result set, find out how many number of rows are present in that by calling this NUMROS, number of rows. Remember that this is not a function, but this is a property which is associated with the result set. Similarly, the property of field count will give me how many fields are there. Okay, so use these two variables num result and num fields to design a first row of a table which you are going to create in HTML. Inside that table, the first row will contain the headings. The names of the columns of the table will act as the heading for the entire table. So it will generate a first row. There is another function which is inside this MySQL I API is fetch field. So fetch field, result arrow fetch field name. What will it do? It will fetch the next field in the sequence, and arrow name will give me the name. So that means what? First result of this particular function will be emp id, then it will be emp name, emp address, and emp salary. All those 4 field names will be placed into the 4 cells of the first row. So it will form the heading. And then using these 2 for loops, nested for loops, one outer loop going over from I is equal to 0 to num result. Num result is the number of rows, how many rows are there, and the inner for loop is going over for j is equal to 0 to num fields, how many fields are there. Okay, so using which every time when you access the row of j, what it will give, the each content of each row, each column corresponding to each row, fetch one row at a time. It will be an associative array called row. Row of j will give me row of 0, row of 1, row of 2, 3, and so on, as many number of fields are there. Those values will be put into the td tag of the row. So likewise, as many number of rows are there, as many number of rows will be added up to the HTML table, and finally close the table. So if you run this script, you should get a tabular representation of all the records in our employee table. Incidentally, in this table so far we have added only one record, so you should be seeing only one record displayed in the table. First row will be the headings, and second row will be the one record that we added. Okay, so let us run this and verify our result. So MySQL i2.php, when I execute that, this is of course the connection successful message. Afterwards, a table is created or rendered by our PHP script, of which the first row is the names of the columns in that employee table, and the second row is the actual row in the employee table. So because there is only one table, only one row has occurred. But then as many number of rows will be there, they will be displayed one below the other. No issues with that. So that is the demonstration of both procedural interface as well as the object oriented interface of this MySQL I API.
In this video, we will learn a very important feature of object oriented programming, which is called as inheritance.
This example shows how you can establish inheritance between two PHP classes. In this PHP script, there are two classes that are defined. One is student and the other is engineering student, ENGG. Because this class, the design of this second class is going to be based upon the student class. You establish the association between these two by using the keyword extends. So the syntax is class engineering student extends students, class ENGG extends student. So as an effect, what will happen? The resources of the student class, which will be called as the parent class, they will be made available to the child class or the inherited class. So what are the resources in the parent class? That means the student class. So here I have declared three data members or member variables: name, age, and marks, and they have been declared as protected. The access specifier is protected. As a result, what happens? All the protected members will become the protected members of the derived class or the inherited class. Okay, it has only one function, which is incidentally a constructor. Okay, so what happens whenever the object is created, the constructor is called automatically. That is the definition of constructor. So when the object is declared, whenever the object is declared, you will pass certain parameters to the constructor. So in PHP there are two array functions. Remember that we have used these two functions earlier. This is function number of arguments, how many arguments that have been sent to this constructor, to this function, and then there is a function get arguments. So this is the number of arguments, and this is an array. Function get arguments is the array in which all the arguments are stored. So if the constructor is going to receive 3 arguments, the value of n will be 3. Okay, and the subscripts of the function get arguments array will be 0, 1, 2. So respectively, what I am going to do, the 0th subscript or the value at the 0th index of this function get argument will be stored in name, value at the index number 1 to age, and value at index number 2 is to be stored to marks. These are the 3 variables. 3 values received by the constructor will be assigned to name, age, and marks, or rather the data members of the calling object. Fine. So that is constructor, and then there is a get details function which will just display or print out the values of the data members of the calling object. So this arrow name, this arrow age, and this arrow marks will be displayed by the well known echo function. So that is what is in the parent class. 3 data members, all protected, and 2 functions, 1 constructor and 1 get details. That is what is in the parent class student. In the derived class, in addition to the 3 data members that this class will anyway inherit, I want to make available another 4th data member to the object of this class, and that variable is branch. So that means what? Whenever an object of this engg class will be declared, it will have 4 data members, 3 from the parent class, name, age, marks, and 4th its own. So what will happen when I declare the object of this class? It will require 4 parameters. So for example, in this declaration of the object, S1 is equal to new engineering student, new engg, I am sending 4 arguments: name, age, marks, and branch. So these 4 arguments will be received by the constructor of the child class. Function number of arguments will be 4, out of which the 3 arguments, all the arguments will be stored in the array function get arguments. Now it will have value at index number 0, 1, 2 and 3, out of which the values at index number 0, 1, 2, 0, 1 and 2, they will be used to call the constructor of the parent class. So the parent class constructor will take on the values of function get argument 0, 1, 2. So this constructor will be called, and the data members name, age, and marks will be initialized with the provided values. Okay, and then the remaining part of the child class constructor is to assign the 4th value in the array to the branch data member that is introduced in the child class itself. Okay, so you are calling a constructor from the constructor, you are calling a parent constructor from the child constructor. Okay, so that is the advantage of establishing the inheritance. Okay, and then there is a get details function also, which will in turn call the parent get details and print out the remaining data member branch. Incidentally, this is also an example of function overriding, because get details function was defined in the parent class, but it was having only this much of functionality. Now you want to extend the functionality of the child class get details. So therefore you are redefining it so that when the get details function is called by the object of the child class, this get details will be called. Incidentally, through or from inside that you are calling the parent get details class. That is a different issue, but this get details function has been overridden by the engineering class. So this is the simple implementation of our inheritance. Create an object of the child class, give parameters to it. Those parameters will be intercepted by the constructor, of which the first three will be passed on to the constructor of the parent class, and then you call the get details to just display all the data members of the calling object. Okay, so this is a simple demonstration of inheritance. Let us see the execution of this example. So the name of the script is inherit ex.php. This is the result. Name, age and marks, and the branch is CSC. That's how the result is displayed. Okay. So this is the example of inheritance.
In this video, let us get acquainted with the idea of class and object and how it is created or how it is used in PHP language.
Let us now put all these object oriented programming principles in a practical example. The script that I have shown in front of you is called as bookclass.php, and it is placed on the document server of our web server. The name of the class is books, and in which two data members or member variables are defined as price and title, whereas there are a couple of member functions, of which this is a constructor. Remember that a constructor in PHP is having a name construct itself, which is having a prefix of double underscore. Okay, and the two arguments that the object is going to receive. For example, if this is the construction of the object of the books class, I am saying physics is equal to new books. How many arguments? Two arguments I am passing to the constructor. So the constructor will take two arguments. First argument is given to the title member variable of the class, and the second argument is given to the price. So this arrow title is equal to par1, that means parameter 1, and this price is equal to parameter 2. So this is the behavior of the constructor, right? Then there are some set and get functions which are called setters and getters. So set price will receive one parameter, and the received parameter is stored as the price variable, the value of the price variable of the object. So this price is equal to parameter. Similarly, there is a get price which will return the value of the price parameter, price member variable of the object. Similarly, there is a set title and get title. In addition to that, there is a get details method inside the class, which will just display the value of title and price of the calling object. Remember that this variable, a special variable called as this, stores the reference or the address of the calling object that we are going to use to fetch the value of the title and price of the calling object. So this is the entire class. Okay. Now we are going to create three objects. Remember that in order to create a object, you have to use the new operator. So new books, physics is equal to new books. Two parameters, we have decided to send two parameters to assign the data to two member variables of the object. So this is the title, price. New books, maths is equal to new books, chemistry is equal to new books. So these are the three objects that are declared and initialized by the constructor. Just print out the values that have been stored in these two objects, call the get details function. So it will print the title and price associated with the physics object and chemistry object, as well as the maths object also. Okay, now I will call the set price method physics arrow set price. So this set price method will be called, and the value that is going to be passed is 25. So what happens? The 25 becomes the value of this pair parameter, and that will be assigned to this arrow price. Here this will refer to the physics object. So in effect, what is going to happen? Initially the value of the price member variable of the physics object was 10. Now it will be set to 25. Similarly, I am changing the title of the maths object. So I will call the set title, and then just to verify, the changes are to be displayed by calling the get details. Then what I am doing is, there is a get price method I showed you, which will return the price of the calling object. So I am returning the price parameter of first object, second object and third object, and I am adding it into a variable total, and then I am printing it out. So all the elements of the object oriented programming principles are used here. How to declare the class, how to declare the object, how to press the constructor into action, and how to call the different member functions inside the class. So let us run this script bookclass.php and see what are the different results that they will be generated. Okay, this is the output. Three objects were declared. For each object the constructor was called into picture, and the values are, the object is initialized. Then we go on to change the price of object named as physics by calling the set price, and then you call the set title. Whatever changes have been done, they have been displayed in these two outputs, and then finally you call the get price for each object, and the get price returns the price, which is an integer, and then you perform the addition, which will give you the total cost. So that is the demonstration of the class and object as used in a PHP language.
In this video, another new feature of PHP 7 I will introduce to you, called anonymous class.
So this is the example of an anonymous class in PHP 7. So in order to create an anonymous class, actually the anonymous class is the one which doesn't have a user defined name. So you can directly create an object of a unnamed or anonymous class. So this is the object of that anonymous class, equal to new. New is the operator which will create a new object, class. This new class will create an unnamed sort of class, and in front of which this is 10, I want to pass on the value to its constructor. Okay, so inside the class I have one data member or variable, member variable called as x. So private $x is my instance variable or member variable, in which in the same class this is a constructor. So the value that is passed here will become the value of this arrow x, so that means this x, and then there are two functions inside the nameless or anonymous class. One is add, other is subtract. So whatever argument that may have been passed to this add function, that and the value of x will be added and it will be returned. Same thing is with the subtraction. So let us now see what happens. This obj is the object of this class, which has this arrow x being set equal to 10. And if I call now obj arrow add, so this function will be called, because this function is belonging to this object, and the value that is passed to that function is 20. So what will happen, this 20 will go to this y, this arrow x is anyway 10 because it is coming from the constructor. So 10 plus 20 will be the value of this variable result. Similarly, if I call this add arrow or obj arrow sub or subtract, so this function will be called, this 5 will become the value of y, this arrow x is instance at the time of instance creation, the value of x has been set to 10, so 10 minus 5 will be the value of this result. So that's how an anonymous class, a new feature in PHP 7, that can be constructed and used. So let us run this and see the result. So this is the URL anonymous.php in my browser. Result is addition is equal to 30, subtraction is equal to 5. Addition is the first result is the call to the inner function add inside the anonymous class, and sub, that is for subtraction.
In this video, we shall see the concept of cookies in a PHP web application.
So here now I will demonstrate the way in which a cookie is set and cookie is retrieved in PHP. Actually, I will show you three different codes. One is the HTML form, second is the PHP script which will set the cookie, and the third is the PHP script which will read back the cookies. So starting with the HTML form, the name of the HTML page is cookieform.html. All it has is a simple form in which two text elements are there, and the method is post. The form data is sent by using the post method to a PHP script called as setCookie.php. When you press the submit button, the data will be directed towards the setCookie.php. So what is there in the setCookie.php? This is that PHP script. So all we are doing is fetching the form data by using the $_post associative array. Remember that the HTML elements were having the names as name and age. So these are the keys. The values associated are retrieved and stored in the two variables name and age. So use those variables to set the cookie. The syntax of set cookie function is set cookie, the name of the cookie and the value. Okay, the name of the cookie and value. Here you are setting the time interval, the URL and the other parameters as explained in the earlier discussion. So those two cookies will be set. It will just give a message cookies are set, and then it will give you an hyperlink. If you click that, this getCookie.php will be opened. That is having a code to read back the cookies. So this is the getCookie.php. What it does, it simply finds the value associated with the name key of the $_cookie associative array, that is a part of the request server variable. So from which the cookie name and cookie age are fetched and they are displayed. So whichever values that you may have given in the earlier form, they will be read back. So these are the three different codes. One is the HTML form, other is the set cookie script, third is the get cookie script. I'll show all these three activities in front of you by running starting from the cookieform.html. So this cookie form.html contains two text elements. Let us enter some data into it and press the submit button. What happens? The form will take the data back to a PHP script called setCookie.php. The two cookies will be set. Right? Now there is a hyperlink which takes me to the getCookie.php, which reads back the values. So these are the two values. So this is a small but effective example of setting and retrieving the cookies in PHP.